Painscreek killings. This game killed me. Interestingly enough, the game doesn't have much. Maybe because of that, I have a lot to say. That's interesting. So what I was expecting. Before I played this game, I understood that this was like a mystery game and you are kind of a detective, or you play in the role of a detective. You are not a detective, but I didn't know that. I was expecting to be a detective. If what you do in the game is what a detective does, I was expecting the main character to be a detective. And you are not. You are a journalist. So while playing the game, I was expecting to find clues. That's what detectives do. Also, I was expecting to find NPCs because I was expecting to do interrogations. And there is no one in this town, like 99% of the game. You will not interact with anyone. You don't have interrogations. So that's also crossed. And there are suspects, but you don't see them because everybody is dead or has left this town. So it's not like the story happens in real time. This story that you are witnessing has already happened. It happened in the past. And you are learning about the people who lived here and what happened through text and documents. I'll say texts and documents to be benevolent, but I'll talk about that later. I guess that if you've seen my playthrough, you know what I mean by texts and documents. It's an euphemism for diaries, but there are more things than diaries. So I was expecting a detective game where you are a detective and you do detective things like find clues, interrogate and talk to suspicious people. But you don't. You are a journalist and you are here to investigate and cover what happened in the past. And if you don't find clues and you don't interrogate suspects, what is it that you do? Well, what you do in this game is find diaries, mostly on drawers, to learn about the people and what happened. 98% of the story is told through diaries. The other thing that you do in this game, it's aside from walking from place to place, it's find keys. These keys, they act like gateways for progress. So you, at the start, you have access to an area, but this area is connected to the second area by a door, and you need to find the key. So while you are finding the key, you are learning about the environment, the places where you can go, where you can't, things that happen, and keep unraveling the story until you find the key that allows you to bypass this door and get to the next section. And the next section is like another chapter. Chapter 2 tells you a bit more about new characters, and this second section has maybe 2 other side sections, and then you can play them in any order, but you need to find the key, and these keys allow you to keep progressing. So this is what you do in this game. You access an environment, find a lot of documents that tell you about the story, and you'll get stuck at some point until you find the key that allows you to get to the following section. But the sections are not in order. They are more like a circle. They start narrow, they keep opening up and have ramifications until there are dead ends, and then they keep converging until you get to the end. So it's more like a circle, the way you progress, or the new areas. Get to a point when you don't get more, you get less. New ones, but less and less and less until you are at the end. This is what I expecting. This is what I got. So it's totally different. So we've played this game for 5 days, 5 sessions. The first one was a shock because, as I said, I was expecting something and I found another thing. And this not necessarily have to be negative. Many times has happened that I was expecting something and I got a different thing. A different thing that it was equally good, or it was even better, or it was worse. So I don't say that I got something different that I was expecting as a negative. So the first day was a shock because I was expecting more elaborate game than what I got, because there was nothing. I was a bit lost, even though that there's not much to do, but I was lost. It was a shock. But then I understood, oh, lower your expectations because this game is more modest than what you were expecting. And then, oh, so you find diaries and you find keys and then you keep progressing this way. Okay, let's play along. And for the 90% of the game, the gameplay, it's like this. And I understood that and I acknowledged. So I played along and I learned to enjoy this game as what it is. And then I was enjoying, like, for the first 90% of the game. Something happened at the end that I will talk about in a minute, but this is my general idea. I think I'll move on to the positives and negatives before I keep talking about the final 10% or 5%, because it's what really put the balance to one side or the other, in my opinion, or how I felt about the game. It was really decisive. So let me move on to the positives and then I'll keep telling you my opinion. Positives and negatives. Sadly, only have one positive and I have many negatives, but I had to choose only 3. I guess that with just this information, you can see if I liked the game or I didn't like the game. It's also shocking because I enjoyed the game as it is for the 90%, so I should say that I like the game, but the end gameplay section, it throws everything away. Let me talk about that later. First, the positives. My first and only positive, it's a minor thing because I don't have great things to say about this game. It's not, I can't find big positives like something genius or a brilliant idea or not even medium level. So my one and only positive, it's what kept me playing, which is unraveling the story. The story is not a revolution. It's not something unexpected. It's not the sixth sense. It's not something unseen before. It's a normal story. But I think, and that's what kept me playing and wanting to know more, is that even though it's a day-to-day story, it's told in a fragmented way. So you are learning pieces through these documents, and in your mind you are like building this puzzle. You are learning about the main characters first, and from there it keeps expanding like a cobweb, and then you are learning how these characters are interconnected, and then there are more characters attached to these main characters, and so on and so forth. By the end, you have a map in your mind of who everyone is, how they are related in between them, their opinions from one to the other character. And this is what kept me playing, because you are learning this story and you are getting this information into small bites, into small pieces, so you kind of want to know more and more, because the story, as I said, has already happened. It's like you are reading a book. It's not happening in real time. The actions, the events of this story, they are not happening in front of you, in front of your eyes. They happened in the past. This is the only thing positive that I can find in this game. Other than that, I only found problems and errors and mistakes and poor design decisions. So let me start from the beginning. My first negative, it's something that it's not major because it's the list of my list of negatives, and that's the music. Music, it's not well chosen for this game. It's like an overcooked steak. It's too much. The music is supposed to be in the background. If it's really good, it takes you to the place that the developer wants you to be, or feel in a certain way. That's if it's really good music. If it's normal music, it's on the background and it doesn't annoy you, it doesn't take you off the action. That's normal music. It's nice and fine in the background. It goes along well with what's happening. But it's not this case. In this game, music is like too much in the wrong way. Too present. It's taking you to a setting which doesn't correlate with the action. While you are walking on this town, you are listening to a piano. Why you're listening to the piano instead of, I don't know, ambient music or something, a melody that is smooth and it goes along. You are there, there's no one, nothing's happening, nothing's moving, but it's not the worst. I don't understand. I don't agree that this is good music for this setting, but let's say it's okay. The good thing is that every environment has their own music mostly, but when you go to the inn, it's shocking, and this music appears in other places. Suddenly you are in the inn, which there is also no one. There's no one in the whole game except for the end. And this music, it's setting you up for a thing that it's not what's going on. It's like you are in a haunted mansion. You're in a kind of mystery game, but it's like too much. It's like something's behind the corner watching you or something. And I made a mention while I was playing. I was shocked, like, why is this music playing? It's like too much mystery. This is a mystery game, but this music is putting me into a mystery that is not happening. It's like someone's going to stab me with a knife from around the corner or something. And in general, the music is repetitive. After you play 5 hours or so, we've played for around 15 because it's 5 sessions of 3 hours. After 3-5 hours, all the music is the same, even though you are in different places. And the thing that makes me choose it for the list of the negatives is that it's poorly selected. Doesn't match with what is happening in the game. My second of the negatives, and I need to be quick, but otherwise this will take forever, to explain everything that is negative about I see as negative. I've read many reviews on Steam, and there are people who like it, and I understand that they like it because there are things that you can like. As I said, I like the story, I like unraveling what's happening, and you can enjoy this and make blind eyes to the other things, and I understand. But in my opinion, I see, and while I'm playing and I'm analyzing the game, I see many more negatives than positives in here, and I have to say it, I have to be honest. Moving on, second negative, it's a bit ambiguous, but I hope to be specific. It's general gameplay, or gameplay in general. So the things that you do in the game. I understand this game is about this, it's about obtaining diaries and finding keys, but it gets to a point where enough is enough. And is it realistic or believable that everybody writes their thoughts on diaries? Every single one of the main characters, all of them, they have diaries. It's hard to believe, it's not realistic. Let's say everybody has a diary. The other thing that you do in this game is open drawers, open cupboards and cabinets. Is that all that you do in this game? In any game could be something minor. It's like, oh, obvious, you have a drawer, you can open it. But it's the main gameplay in this game. And the amount of drawers and doors and cupboards that you find and you have to open to see what's inside, it's ridiculous. In any other detective game, you might find a drawer, you have to open it and you find something. But if you do that for 15 hours, it gets to a point which is ridiculous. It's not fun anymore. It's not fun. And aside from being realistic, because everybody writes on diaries and so on. So it's one thing and another thing and another thing. And little by little, this game is destroying itself from the inside. Maybe if it was shorter, it would be better for this game, because you can sustain a mechanic of finding diaries for everybody and opening drawers for 5, maximum 10 hours, 15. Maybe this game should be shorter. If this is what you do, it doesn't match the size of the game with the mechanics. This gameplay, finding diaries, too many, not realistic, and finding keys, everything is progress through keys. Opening drawers, things like the first time you access the town and all doors are closed until you find the key for specific doors, or the sewer section, which is a small version of the town. In general, the gameplay is not fun. It's fun for a while at the beginning, like in day 2 I was starting to enjoy this because you are doing it for the first time, but while you do it for 5, 10, 15 hours, it gets old, it gets repetitive, and it's not fun anymore. So the game kills itself by playing the game, because there's no progress, there's no evolution of the mechanic of opening the drawers, aside from, oh, I found a key that opens this specific drawer. Aside from that, there's no evolution, it wasn't the gameplay that kept me playing this game. It was the story, as I said. And my last negative, and it's clear to me that, and not necessarily everybody has to agree, when you make a poor design decision when you are making a video game, and this is a perfect example. My last negative, before I explain any further, is, as I said before, the end section. The end section of the game, it's a terrible mistake in this game, and it further proves that this game is killing itself. It's destroying what the game is and what the game proposes. So during the, let's say, 90% of the game, you are finding diaries and opening drawers and finding keys to access new areas with more diaries and more drawers. If this is the game, if this is what you're offering as a developer, if this is what you propose, why at the end of the game, let's say it's at 10%, it's not that much, maybe it's a 5, doesn't matter. Why at the end of the game there is a section where someone comes at you and wants to kill you, when we haven't done this before, we haven't experienced this in this game. The first 90% there is no one, we are relaxed, doing this in slow pace. Suddenly the end of the game, it's rushed, it's 200% adrenaline, the music sets you in a mood that it's not what you have experienced before. Someone's coming at you. You don't know what to do because how do I kill you? By opening your drawer or by finding your diary? I don't understand what I'm supposed to do. And this person comes at you and then there's an axe on the table. So if you watch my playthrough, it's like, okay, this is happening, but I don't want to belong. I don't want to be part of what's happening because this is not the game I've been playing for 14 hours. This is not my game. Whatever is happening is destroying my experience. So I stood there and I did nothing. And then I was thinking, okay, let's play along because now my enjoyment is zero. It has been shattered and destroyed and I'm not enjoying this anymore because if I need to continue, I have to go through this and this is not what I was here for. Okay, let's play along. Someone's coming to kill me. I need to fight back. So my first instinct was to grab this axe and fight back. No, this is not what you do because this game is not prepared for you to fight back. There is no mechanic. You are not meant to grab the axe even though it makes sense because you want to defend yourself. Even though you can grab the axe, you cannot use the axe and there's no fighting mechanics because this game is not about fighting. So the only thing you can do, and this is third option that I took, is run or walk. Walk fast. That is something that you do in this game, walk. So you can walk away and you walk away. Let me stop this argument here because before I like to talk about what unravels this situation. So there is a murderer in this town and apparently it's the only survivor and nobody suspected. This only survivor is the murderer. But anyway, if you are a murderer, would you record yourself in a cassette tape confessing your crime? And oh yes, I did this and this and there was a detective, I need to kill him. Oh, there's a new person in the town and it's trying to investigate the case, I need to deal with that other person. Who in the world of murderers would recall themselves as a testimony? Oh, it's because we are making a video game and we have to transmit the information somehow. And how else would you get this information if it's not through documents, diaries, text, notes and recordings? It doesn't make sense. Absolutely zero sense. This murderer recording his own voice confessing the crime, it's the cherry on top of the cake. It's like too much. So you listen to this tape and then this guy comes into the building and locks the exit door. This makes sense because this person is accessing this building through this door, so he is right there. It is possible that chains the exit so you can't escape. And then let me continue. You escape and then you go through another door that takes you to the sewers for the second time. But this door, it was locked before. Now magically, somehow, a ghost, and I say a ghost with intention, opened this door magically. Now the door is open. Why? We haven't found the key for this door. Why is it now open? Nobody has touched this door. It's okay. We go through the door and we escape. So we keep running through these sewers from this murderer and we end up in the other side of the town, which is the hospital. Once we go outside of the sewers, magically the doors of the hospital are chained as well, which doesn't make sense. How the murderer knew we were going to escape through the sewers first? Because he could foresee that we were going to escape through the main door of the church, but we escaped through the sewers. The sewers has many doors and we could go through any of the doors, but we end up in the hospital. When we go out the sewers and into the hospital, the main door for the hospital is chained. Like the murderer predicted that we were going to run away through the sewers and appear at the hospital, so he in advance chained the main door. Also doesn't make sense. And it's a plot hole on top of another plot hole and on top of another plot hole. So we keep running. Okay, we keep running. Where to go in the hospital? We could keep running in circles, but in the end I realized, okay, you want me to go to the roof, and in the roof I don't know what you want me to do because there's nothing to do on the roof. The only thing we could do is wait for the murderer to come, and as we stood on a corner, the murderer approached and a cinematic activated. We didn't do anything. The ending of the game unravels. But what happens in the end is not a consequence of our actions. So we are the protagonist of the game, but what's happening is not a consequence of us, which is contradictory for a video game. When you play a video game, you want interaction and you want the player to be in control of the gameplay and the action and what's happening, but not alienate the player and say, you stay here in the corner, let me do my thing. And then the ending cinematic but you stay away. That's the opposite of a video game. And also, this murderer that comes to you, it's the only NPC that you find in this town. Why, if the town is empty, it has been abandoned, or either people have been killed and they died, or they left, why include a section, the last section, where there is an NPC and you animate this person? You are putting your work into something that it's not what the game is about. And in the end, the ending cinematic, how everything ends story-wise, is not told through an animation. It's told through snapshots or like slides, static images. So then why do you animate? If you don't want to animate, you want to tell the end of the story through static images, why animate this character that's chasing you? And if you are animating the character, let me see the ending through an animation. So it's another thing that is contradictory, and I don't understand. It's a poor design choice after another one, and another one. And this end section, it killed me. Killed the little enjoyment I had of this game. Because I was expecting something, I didn't get that. I understood the gameplay was about something different. I was enjoying that new thing that I found for the first 5 hours or so, maybe because of the story. But after that, it got super repetitive, super repetitive. And I was even joking about opening drawers and finding keys. I couldn't do other than that. And in the end, the game betrays itself and it tells you, okay, you have been doing this for 15 hours. Now let's do something different that doesn't have to do with this, with what you have been doing for these 15 hours. Something totally different, unexpected, out of place, to make you feel not how this game have made you feel. Like you are alone and you are tranquil and you are relaxed and you are doing your things in a slow pace. No, completely the opposite. So the game feels like it betrays itself, and that is the biggest of the negatives. The last section of the game killed the game. It throws everything away. The proposition of the game, the gameplay, nothing makes sense. So it's terrible. It's terrible. Finally, I'd like to say some things more, say a few more things. I'll go quick and fast, but I want to stop into one specific and I'll expand onto that. So, special mentions. There are a lot of plot holes, as I just mentioned. Few of them, there are more plot holes, things that don't make sense. From the story perspective, from the gameplay and the gameplay story perspective, things that don't match. I found a lot of misspellings, which is, they are bad errors, they are bad mistakes. Misspellings at this stage have misspellings. Haven't you reread your own game? Nobody spell checked this game. It's a bit silly. The diaries, they seem to be written by the same person. Not as in the calligraphy and the type, the text used for these diaries, but it feels like someone in the real world, from the developer team, was in charge of writing these diaries. And they don't feel like the diaries belonging to each of the characters, they are different. They feel like they are the same for a strange reason. Everyone writes or speaks in a similar way. They don't feel like written by different people. A special mention, as I said. What else? Puzzles. There are a few puzzles, a handful of puzzles. Some of them, the clues are poorly given to the player and not very well put together. Like the darts puzzle, it's confusing. The chess pieces puzzle, it's not confusing, but you are missing one clue because in the key lock where you put the numbers, there are small letters. You have found this specific type of lock before in the game and there weren't letters. Why should I expect in this one in particular to have letters where no one said there were letters? And also, you don't get the clue that there are letters there in the lock, and they are so tiny you can't see them unless you get closer, like really closer, unnecessarily closer, because you can access the lock from far where you can't see the letters, so it doesn't make sense. Double check this. And the puzzle for the bookshelf in the mansion's studio next to the chess pieces puzzle. The clues are poorly designed and poorly given to the players. They are more confusing than helping. Another special mention. I've seen that they sell a PDF so digital document, it's not even physical, of how they made the game. This should be a reward. Either people who bought your game automatically, like when you make a Kickstarter, it's one of the rewards. But if not, when you finish the game, you unlock these extras, these behind the scenes. And then maybe I learn something that makes me see the game in a different way. And then I want to replay it if I elect it. And I want to play again and play knowing this extra information from the developer team. But no, they are selling it, selling a PDF on Steam as an extra. Finally, my last special mention. It's something that it was a selling point of this game. You can feel like a detective. You need to take your own notes in this game to progress. At the beginning, I think this is a marketing thing, one of those things that they say but to sell the product or get attention, but in the end it's like nothing to do with that. In the beginning, I was progressing fairly well without taking notes. I was remembering every note, every clue, every number, and where every key goes to. But to a certain point where, as I said before, it keeps opening up this game, it got to a point I got too many and I lost track. In my mind, I had to start taking notes. But I found out that you are supposed to take your own notes. The game doesn't tell you anything. That's what they said. Even in a trailer for the game, they say, or a kind of presentation for the game, they say, you need to take your own notes. Okay. I found out that the inventory gives you clues about the objects, which makes sense because this is a video game. Maybe I play today and I don't play again in a week. And then by the time I play again, I don't know where I get this key from. So it just makes sense that the game tells you, oh, you picked up this key somewhere. And by somewhere, oh yes, I found this key here and it needs to be used there in X and Y. It makes sense because this is a video game. It has to be enjoyed. But it's not true. It's not true that you need to take your own notes, because the inventory tells you. So to a certain degree, you need to take notes. Also, you are supposed to take notes. Then why is there a history of records of documents? And in these records of documents, not everything is recorded. Not every piece of information, be it a diary, a newspaper, a document, a note, or a photograph. There are also photographs in this game to be found. Not every piece of information that I mentioned is recorded into this journal in the game. So why some information is recorded in the journal, some other isn't? Why I get a key in a locker room with a tag that says this belongs to Bernard, and I am supposed to take note myself that this key I found it in a locker and belongs to Bernard's house. But then the inventory tells me, so I don't need to take notes. It's also contradictory. So the amount of contradictions in this game, it's unbearable. I lost count and I lost track. So in having said all this, my final score for the Painscreek killings is a seppuku out of 10. It's very clear that this is the only score that I can give, and it's the one that makes more sense, because this game builds its own rules but doesn't live to defend them, doesn't live up to its own rules, and the only thing it does is break them, break all the rules that it builds. It tells you that you need to take your own notes, but then the inventory gives you clues and tells you information that you don't find in the game. The core mechanic of the game is to open drawers and find diaries and keep progressing this way, and in the drawers you can find diaries to learn about the story and keys to access new areas that uncover new information and new bits of the story. But you do that for the 90% or so of the game, and the last section of the game throws everything away, and suddenly you are in an action game, you are escaping, you have an enemy, you have to survive, when this game is none about that. So more than everything else that is wrong in this 90% of the game, which is the core of the game, I can only give this score because of the last gameplay section of this game, because this end section throws everything away and it doesn't belong to this game. It's like it's taken from another game with different mechanics and different expectations, different motivations, different feelings, and everything is different. It's a break. It takes you out of the game completely. And this last section betrays completely the game. I don't consider it part of the game. The game ends when you find the killer. Anything else that you have to do, it's from another game. But if you include it, this last section throws away the game and it betrays itself. It kills itself. Everything that the game was building up to is to be sacrificed by itself, and it doesn't make sense. The amount of mistakes in this last 10% section, just mentioned in the review before, with these special mentions and the third negative, can be comprehended, can be understood. So many mistakes. Isn't it like a red flag or a red light in the developing team that this is not correct? This is not right? If you want to build up some end climax and make something epic, it should be done with the tools that you have been working with throughout the other 90% of the game. If that doesn't give you any red flag, I don't know. This is clear to me that I am not a game developer. So, sadly, my final score for the Painscreek killing is a seppuku out of 10, because the last section of the game killed everything, put an end to everything else that made this game. As I said, I was expecting something and I got a different thing, and when I learned to enjoy what the game was giving me, suddenly the game threw it away. That's in simple terms. And as I said, I recommend it if you like this type of game. You've played the other ones that are better than this one, you can play this one. Maybe you also enjoy it. At least that part, that section that belongs to a detective game, not to an action game.